All right, well, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Tuesday Bro Tuesday. Tuesday Bro Tuesday is generally the live call-in show where everybody gets to discuss a topic of the day. But today's topic of the day is just anarchy. It's anarchy out there. It's crazy. There's stuff just piling on. It seems like every single day. Vaping is under attack. Tobacco harm reduction is under attack. Advocacy groups are under attack. There was someone in South Africa said that we should be called vape terrorists, which, look, that's obviously ridiculous, right? We're not vape terrorists, but we're here to talk about the state of the vape industry as it is right now, where we're at, what we're doing, what can be done. What can be done? I believe there's some things that can be done. And we're going to have a very special guest today. I'm going to bring him on in just uno momento. But we have Alex Clark from Casaa here. He's just as mad as everybody is. He's just as mad as all of us. He's just as mad as I am. But Casaa does it. Casaa gets stuff done. So let me bring on our special guest. Let me give a first big welcome to everybody in the chat. Big welcome to everybody on the replay. Thanks for coming out. I know it's always weird. Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m. It's a little bit weird, and I get it. It's a little bit weird. But let's bring on our guest. So we have his video here and we have his audio here. Everybody, this is Alex Clark from Casaa. Yes, Alex Clark from Casaa. So, Alex, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, just tell everybody in the chat what it is you do, over there at the Casaa. What does Casaa even do?
So we are the Consumer Advocates for Smoke-Free Alternatives Association. Mm-hmm. We are a tobacco harm reduction organization. We represent the voice of the consumer in as many ways as we possibly can. We advocate for access to all smoke-free alternatives to combustible tobacco, and of course, vaping is the one that's on everybody's mind.
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of people came to the organization. It was people that quit smoking by switching to vaping, and we formed in 2009 after the FDA started seizing shipments coming in from overseas.
Yep.
And it was a group of people that were kind of loosely together on ECF, and I don't know if you voted. I don't know who voted and what, but they got together and they put together a board of directors, and in 2010 we officially incorporated as a nonprofit. We're a 501c4, and the bulk of what we do, the way that I spend most of my time is tracking legislation at the local, state, and federal level, tracking regulation at the federal level, and breaking that down so we can inform consumers about what's happening, and then we put it through the magic make it simple machine and give everybody opportunities to call and write, and even if you're ambitious, you've got the information to be able to meet with lawmakers and attend hearings and speak for yourself. I'm not a lobbyist. We don't hire lobbyists. This is all about empowering people with information and tools to, get out there, get it done.
Yeah, get out there, get it done. I think it's great. I've been a fan of Casaa. I mean, I remember back in 2009 when the FDA started seizing shipments from China at the border, at customs. I remember every vendor was affected, Inhaler and Pure Smoker and everybody, eLiquid Planet. They were all affected by this. And I remember the beginnings of Casaa, and just having Casaa around, like in the vape industry, I think is a really important thing. I always try to get people to go to Casaa. But one thing that I wanted to clear up is Casaa does a lot. Casaa is a limited group of people. It's a finite, small group of people. And what this small group of people accomplishes is honestly a lot. I mean, there's just so much going on that sometimes Casaa can't have calls to actions for things. I mean, that's just...
Yeah.
I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, unfortunately. There's some nuance to it. It's not always just because you see a bill introduced doesn't mean that it's going to move anywhere. And you don't want to kind of, a lot of this is about keeping your powder dry. So, if I put out a call to action for every bill that gets introduced, people would burn out. Lawmakers wouldn't want to hear from us anymore. It would just kind of destroy any kind of goodwill there is between all of us. And yeah, it's a really small couple of people, actually. If you are seeing a lot of the stuff that's written, a lot of the stuff on the website, I gotta say, Kristen Knoll-Marsh, who's one of the original Casaa members, she does a good deal of work, and people may not realize it. All the information that's on the state pages, the daily heads up alerts, she helps me a tremendous amount with updating all of the legislation stuff that we're putting on our website. She does an excellent job, and she's part-time, but she seems to work her fingers to the bone. So it's her and me. And that's when you see stuff coming out from Casaa, it's just two people.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we do have a very credible and all volunteer board of directors. These are folks that bring a lot of skills to our board. Julie Wessner, Julie. A lot of people know Julie.
Yeah.
She's been with this from the beginning. And I earlier this year, described her as bedrock of the vaping community.
Yes. Absolutely. Julie's awesome. I've known Julie for a long time, and I feel like I'm even though it's a small group of people, it's very grassroots, and you're doing everything you can. We're doing everything we can, and it gives me a little bit of comfort, I guess, knowing that we're not really alone in this. Like, we have Casaa as a consumer group to maybe guide us a little bit through some of these murky waters of legislation. And, I got to tell you, before vaping, I never really cared. I never really kept up on bills and governors and assembly people and representatives and how the system works and all of this. But because of vaping, now we know. Now a lot of us are real educated, and that's due in large part to the information that I get from Casaa. When Casaa is talking about how this bill's going to go, what the steps it needs to go through and things like that, I'll just sit and praise Casaa forever. I think you guys are doing great work. Great work, Alex. Great work. But enough blowing vapor up your ass, I guess. It's just crazy what's going on out there right now, and we can't possibly. It seems like something's happening every day, Alex. It seems like something's happening every day.
It's nuts. It's like I said before we went live. It seems like I guess it was over the holiday weekend. It's maybe started a little bit before that. It was like every night I was seeing some sort of vaping story on the national news or my local news. And it just seems to have picked up in intensity since then. We've got governors from around the country that are making, they're having press conferences talking about what they're going to do about flavors, what they're going to do about these lung issues. I think I did an interview for a TV station in Ohio this afternoon. So I guess Ohio, there was a press conference. I didn't see the press conference, but it's happening.
Yeah.
And that was crazy. I don't even know what that article is going to look like. At one point, the guy asked me about, why is Juul putting vitamin E acetate in their flavorings? And it was just that moment of, I had to kind of catch my breath. Like, you have completely read this wrong.
Yeah.
And it was. I have no idea how good the article is going to be. I apologize if anybody has to read it.
Well, no, I mean, look, it's something, right? You could have done nothing. Yeah. But you got to do something.
Oh, yeah.
You got to do something. And it's the same thing. There was some Charter Spectrum web series that they wanted to come to my house and interview me, and I didn't know if it was going to be like an anti-vaping piece, a pro-vaping piece, or whatever. I just said yes. I'm like, yes, come talk to me. I'll try to give you some information. I don't know how this is going to turn out, but I felt like I had to do something.
Yeah,
you just got to do it.
I hope that we put out a press release in response to the lung issues. I'm trying to remember which releases are which, but hopefully that has generated a lot of media people now know that they can contact us for a different perspective. We're not representing the industry,
right?
So we do have a much different perspective.
Yeah, but you represent vapors, and harm reduction, and facts and science and things like that.
Yeah,
it's not just
the harm reduction angle in all of this is what's really getting lost.
Yeah,
and it's apparent in all of the statements that are coming out from departments of health, and even the FDA. The FDA is so far, what's the only, between the FDA and the CDC, they're the only ones that came out with a very direct warning to consumers,
right,
about don't buy black market THC products, but they still didn't. They're not really able to address. Look at all of these other smoke-free products, and that was an alert that we had to put out because nobody else is talking about it. And quite honestly, there's no other organizations in this space that can, other than maybe like if the Drug Policy Alliance wants to get on board, or the Harm Reduction Coalition. It's just any vaping specific kind of organization isn't really in a position to say, also try these other smoke-free products,
right,
like snus or the nicotine pouches, or even try the toothpicks. Like whatever you do, try something before you go back to smoking. And so that's part of our mission, and that's a message that we have to get out. Yeah,
we have to get out. And so I know Casaa sent out, there's these illicit black market is what they're calling them, these THC carts, and it keeps getting they're not doing anybody any favors by just using the blanket term of vaping. Right? That's all they're saying. Just caused by vaping. And this is something that I've talked about on the stream. Angela Garrity has mentioned this. Vaping is just the verb.
Right.
It's the action of vaporizing. So, that seems really irresponsible that they're just saying this blanket statement of vaping, avoid all vapor products. How in a world when all of the media and everybody is saying vaping, how do we even get our message out? How do we get the truth out there?
Yeah, when you stop there, people are going to get confused. There's a lot of cross pollination between cannabis and nicotine in terms of terminology. But there are some very clear and distinct differences between how people talk about the product. So, I would never call any nicotine product I have here a vape pen.
Right.
I know that kind of crosses over, but vape pen is predominantly in the cannabis world. And so, we consumers, we all have we got our own lingo, man. And, we know what it is. But there are things that health officials are saying that are just absolutely confusing.
Yeah.
And I understand, the public generally does not appreciate nuance and complexity.
No.
So when you're putting out a health warning, it has to be direct. And like I said, the only agency that's done a very good job of this so far is the FDA. Of all people,
I know,
the
which
FDA
is crazy.
Kind of nailed it.
Well, and what do you think about, as all this was going on and these teenagers or whoever is getting sick, and one person even died, and now I heard it's up to 3 people that have died now. And this entire time, how many was it? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I know of 5. I've heard that there is now a 6th.
There is now a 6th.
Yeah.
What do you think about the CDC just dragging their feet and not saying anything for weeks on end? Isn't it their responsibility to keep us safe, to keep citizens safe?
Yeah, definitely. This is, part of the things that I've been saying to the media, and we've put it in our own materials. The real danger here is that by confusing everybody, we're going to have these people who probably recently, even within the past year or two, they're so freaked out about this news that they're just going to go back to smoking.
Yeah.
And so, rather than put out information that's protecting people, you're putting out information that's actively harming people.
Yeah, actively harming.
It's not just, and it doesn't stop at the announcement and the public. It's eroding the credibility of the CDC, which should be a trusted federal agency that we turn to in times of crisis, like when there's something bad in the lettuce and people are getting sick.
Yes.
But for the CDC to operate as a political organization, that's just dangerous.
It is dangerous, but I mean, even in that situation of the bad lettuce, we had that bad romaine lettuce, and they said, but even then they were a little bit more specific. They said it's this certain type of lettuce grown in this very certain area, and these measures are in place. They didn't just go all lettuce, avoid all salads. That's basically the equivalent of what they're saying.
Well, we're moving now into the much larger discussion about cannabis regulation, which is what has really complicated all of this. And you can credit our federal drug laws with a lot of the initial confusion, which comes from people, for fear of persecution, not revealing that they were using a THC product.
Yeah.
So this is why you've got plenty of people. There's a story of a young man in Philadelphia who was 19 years old. He showed up and he said he was using, he might have said he used a Juul, and then he ended up in a medically induced coma. And his mom went back to his room and searched it and found the THC cartridge and brought it in. And so that's, it took that to reveal the truth.
Right, the truth.
And this is all, our federal agencies, a lot of departments of health outside of a legal state, they can't really have this conversation about cannabis and about how people are afraid of talking about it because of cannabis prohibition.
Yeah. You get into this weird area, like you said, where in some states it's legal, in some states it's illegal, and the illegal states are out of control. They have no idea what's going on. But this is something that's even this has happened in California, which is a legal state. So, I mean, evidently there's enough of a black market even in a legal state for this to kind of pop up.
Again, another conversation about appropriate regulations. I've learned more about cannabis and fake pot in the past month than I really ever wanted to know.
Yep.
But I mean, I try to follow cannabis issues. We've got some things to discuss about marketing and other regulations that might actually work well for the vapors, for the nicotine side of things. But as I understand it, something like 2/3 of the marijuana grown in California is sold on the underground market. So there's a glut of supply. But it's also due in part to the fact that the regulations in California are very burdensome. I don't quite have the word to say. I don't want to really disparage them because
burdensome is fine. There's a lot of hoops to jump through. A lot of hoops.
There's a lot of hoops. There's a lot of expensive hoops. But it is this sort of effort to make sure that what's being sold is compliant with some sort of standard. There's no pesticides, there's no fungicides, there's no herbicides, there's no contaminants. People have to go through that. I understand that it's expensive. If there's a way to make that easier, it should be done. Regulations work best when companies and consumers want to comply with them.
Yes.
It has to be, the cost has to come down. Whatever tax there is on cannabis in California, I assume it's very high. That's a barrier for people to participate in a legal market. So there's all kinds of things that are, pushing these products onto an underground market and making them unsafe.
Right. So I've seen a lot of cannabis companies on Instagram and Twitter recently sort of like putting out these, I don't know if I would call it even a press release, but like a mission statement. Like, we here at whatever, farms, lab, whatever, we test and they go through this whole, none of this is from us. We do not use vitamin E acetate. We do this. We have trace recall. We can look up all of these lab reports. We can do all of this stuff. And they're sort of defending themselves and kind of separating themselves out from this big cluster. Why is it that a liquid manufacturer isn't doing the same thing? Why isn't a liquid manufacturer like Naked coming out and saying, we have no part in this. We have this lab stuff. We do it this way. We test our liquids. There's no vitamin E acetate. We're very rigorous in our things and defending themselves from this the same way that cannabis companies are.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm really. Casaa is not the best organization to stand up and defend the industry.
Yeah.
We're all about making sure that consumers have access to these products. But I will say, if anybody's thinking about doing that, now's the time. I mean, a week ago was the time.
Yeah.
Because as I mentioned, the media definitely doesn't understand what these products are all about. They don't understand the FDA regulations. I had to write this reporter back and clarify that, according to the existing regulations, and I can't emphasize this enough, the vapor industry is regulated by the FDA. According to the existing regulations, manufacturers have to be registered with the FDA. They have to have their ingredient listing into the FDA. They're subject to inspection by the FDA. Mm-hmm. And on top of all of that, e-liquid manufacturers somewhat pride themselves on the cleanliness of their labs.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their ISO whatever 1000 lab, and they promote that as an advantage to buying their products. So I know that people have to be very careful about not making a modified risk claim, but I would definitely encourage anybody to talk with your legal team and see what kind of statement you can put out verifying that you are compliant with the existing regulations, and you have good manufacturing practices. It's not so much about saying that your product is safer than smoking. It's more about saying that you stand by the quality of it and that you're comfortable selling it to people, and we don't use any of these funky additives or anything like that.
I think it's not, I mean, you don't even have to say, look, our product is safer than smoking. I think we just have to say, look, our product is safer than the illegal black market cartridges that are making people sick. I mean, is the FDA going to go, no, you can't even say that? No modified health claims. Would we get in trouble?
I'm not sure, which is why I always defer to lawyers.
Come on, Alex.
Yeah, it's.
I'm just kidding.
I'm not a lawyer. I don't claim to be, and none of this is legal advice. So definitely check with your legal team.
Yeah.
But and I don't know what kind of issues you would run into in saying that look, our product isn't what's making people sick, or making some sort of statement about there's no nicotine product that's making people sick. Mm-hmm. I also sort of want to challenge everybody to think about, what kind of world we're going to be living in under nicotine vapor prohibition, which is arguably right around the corner. Also, depending on what state or city you live in.
Yeah.
That's a situation where, just like with cannabis, people are going to be making these products in an unregulated underground environment. There's no good manufacturing practices. There are no standards to hold people to. Mm-hmm. There's no path for recourse if a customer gets injured. It complicates things and makes everything more dangerous.
Yeah. So
this is one of our points that has been thoroughly massaged so that it makes sense to a reporter.
Yeah.
But that's something I think that people should really hone in on and make clear.
Yeah. Absolutely. Hang on, let me read this super chat here. Angela Garrity, very gracious of you. For Casaa, proud to help moderate in Texas. That's a great idea, Angela. All the super chat today, we'll just give it straight to Casaa. We need to help pay Alex Clark's rent. They need some help. So all the money today, very gracious of you, Michelle Lynn, as well. For Casaa, hashtag keep up the good work. So the easiest way for a consumer to get involved, get some knowledge dropped on them, it's real easy. You just sign up. You just join Casaa, right? It's free. You just need an email.
Oh yeah.
And
it's free.
And you get the emails. You get the new. Talk a little bit about the new thing that's been going out, like the weekly recap email that I found very helpful. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So, like I said earlier, and thanks Angela for her work in our Texas group.
Yes.
And by the way, we have Texas where we have Facebook groups for all 50 states, and I don't know all of the moderators by name, but I very much appreciate your work. And Kristen is the one who set those up and deals directly with that. Her official title, is member coordinator. So she, she engages with everybody on that level, and so, keeping it in the theme of Kristen, she puts together these sort of daily heads up alerts. They don't come out every day, but it's a little, post on our website. It goes out on Twitter and Facebook, and it's, top stories from the day. She also mixes in, there's some science and commentary in there from some of the, leading tobacco harm reduction experts. So it's a well-rounded somewhat daily type of broadcast. And then on Saturdays, usually Saturdays or Sundays, depending on what I've got on my plate, I'll go through all of those and kind of pick the, the high notes and put that out in an email type newsletter and there's usually a little bit of a message or maybe a rant from me at the beginning.
That's
depending on the mood.
Yeah, and now, go ahead.
If you've signed up for Casaa and you're opted in to get emails, which everybody should be opted in to get emails, that's how we alert you to things. That comes out on a weekly basis. Yeah,
that comes out on a weekly basis. It's really helpful. It's really informative, especially to people like I see you, Alex, on Twitter daily. People like Charles Gardner and even Matt and myself and just Dimitri and just advocates on Twitter. And it's like a war zone every day on Twitter, isn't it? It's just crazy. It's bananas. There's articles. We engage with the Surgeon General sometimes. We talk to certain people sometimes, and it feels like I know what to expect every time I go on Twitter. I have to prepare myself a little. Like, all right, here we go. It's like going to the front lines on Twitter. Do you think that's where like a lot of this is really happening and going down, and this communication is happening is on Twitter? I'm trying to get as many people to Twitter, so it would help me out if you said yes.
Before I started, actually while I was volunteering for Casaa back in 2014, I was doing the Fight for Your Right to Vape Daily Action Plan, and that was pretty much all on Twitter. Every now and then there was something on Facebook, like go to this lawmaker's Facebook page and leave a comment,
right?
Or give a 1 star to the American Cancer Society. But back then it was definitely like, let's get people engaged on Twitter, because that's there's a lot of journalists on there. There's a lot of lawmakers, staffers are paying attention to Twitter. If you're tweeting at a lawmaker, most likely it's the staff that's reading those.
Yeah.
It's not the kind of engagement where you're necessarily going to have a critical conversation with somebody about a particular policy.
Yeah.
But it's good to, they can see that there is this humanity behind this. Even though they try to, dismiss us all as bots and whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Total nonsense.
Yeah.
They love to pull the, like, oh, you're just a shill kind of card.
Yeah.
But it's still, it catches the eye. Every now and then we get a bite from the media.
Yeah.
From national media.
Yeah. You get a little attention.
So it's, and my favorite new term that I learned through someone else was getting ratioed on Twitter. Which we did something, I don't know if it was last year or earlier this year, against Scotty Socks.
Scotty Socks.
Get back to getting ratioed on Twitter.
Yeah, it's crazy. And do you? I get burnt out, Alex Clark. It burns me out just reading these articles, and I don't know if it's just because of what I do in the vape world, but people will barrage of emails like, did you see this article? 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 And it's always like, just brings me down. And I'm like, yeah, I did. Like, how do you not get burnt out? Or are you burnt out and you just fake it really well?
I do get burnt out. August is supposed to be kind of a quiet time. It didn't turn out to be too good.
No.
The Congress is on recess and things slow down in the big legislative bodies. But we still have the local stuff that we pay attention to. I had sort of a forced vacation in July. I fell down some stairs and broke a couple ribs.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. That's all right. I'm totally healed now.
Yeah.
And one of the most remarkable things, I put it up on Twitter, was that, I the thing about healing ribs is there's nothing really you can do about it except for just don't move. And so, the challenge for the first few weeks was I also can't sneeze or cough.
Oh.
And so that's sort of part of my testimonial now. After 6 years of vaping, my lungs are in a position where I didn't have to cough for 3 weeks.
Right.
And, that was good.
Yeah.
A couple of sneezes snuck through, and man, I'll tell you, that hurts like hell.
Yeah, probably not fun.
Yeah. But so that was kind of that was my little vacation, was like a week on the couch trying to get comfortable.
Right. And then as soon as you're back, you're just back in it, just neck deep.
Even while that's happening, it's still, I have to pay attention to this stuff. Yeah. And it does. Monday was a pretty brutal day for me. That's probably the lowest I've felt in a long time. And it's not necessarily just like, oh, vaping's getting shit on. It's, this is scary. I mean, for health officials to be putting out misinformation as part of a political agenda is absolutely terrifying. I mean, if you love democracy, if you love America, this should be shaking you to your core.
Yes.
And that's I mean, I walked around all day with my head just in a garbage can. It was awful.
Yeah.
But then again, I can turn around and see a bunch of people getting active, a bunch of people being engaged, coming on, the GrimmGreen show.
Yeah.
And that's, these are the little things that lift me. I had a phone call with a woman from Florida who was just, the whole thing about the call was, what can I do? What more can I do?
Mm-hmm.
Not demanding things from us or, telling, giving me the latest horrible headline. It was just, what can I do to help? And I only need one of those a week to kind of, really lift my spirits up.
Yeah. No, that's really good. And people coming together and helping and actually giving a shit. And I think the other side of, we were talking earlier, it's going to get worse, it's going to get worse before it gets any better. But I think a side effect of it getting worse is that maybe more people will care. Maybe more people will see how much worse it's getting and decide, okay, like I've been on the sidelines long enough. Now I need to do something. Now we need to do something. Do you think it's going to, band us together in the face of adversity? Or do you think it's going to, I mean, this is a pretty big question, Alex. Do you think it's going to divide the vape world? I guess I'm asking too big of a question, but I think that with how bad it's going to get, I think more people are going to give a shit. I think that's where I'm landing on it.
Yeah, I've always sort of understood that, people aren't going to do anything until the building's on fire.
Mm-hmm.
For all of the activists out there who, have been banging on for years about, equal pay for women and civil rights and gay rights and all of these things. It took Donald Trump getting elected for all of those people to come out into the streets.
Right.
For them, that was their apocalypse, and it galvanized that community. Now, whether or not it's actually led to any kind of change remains to be seen, but it takes some sort of meteor falling out of the sky for everybody to perk up and take action. So, in the coming months, I mean, we're not talking about years down the line anymore.
Nope.
The industry is living on borrowed time.
Yeah.
So,
we have been for a while. I think we've been living on borrowed time for a few years now.
Yeah, I mean, depending on
realistically,
depending on who you talk to, they'll say that any vapor product that's on the market is there illegally as of August 8th, 2016.
Exactly.
So it depends on your perspective, but yeah, I think California seems to be a bit of an exception to the rule. I don't know. I don't mean to disparage the state of California, but San Francisco. Maybe it's just San Francisco. I don't know. I mean, I've seen tons of people show up in LA for hearings. Mm-hmm. I've seen tons of people show up in Sacramento, and they do that thing where they just form a line and everybody says, I'm so and so and I'm opposed. Yep. But in terms of getting people to actually have conversations with lawmakers or write messages or make phone calls. There's sort of the proportion is off. You know, we have a lot of members in California, but not a lot of people taking action. But generally, and you know, San Francisco is on the way to banning everything.
Yeah.
So, you know, for the first few years, from like, you know, 2013 on, you know, Casaa was out there, you know, banging on about how the FDA is going to take action and all these products are going to be taken off the shelves. It seems like people didn't really take that seriously. And then the deeming rule was proposed and people still didn't take it seriously. The deeming rule was finalized and people still didn't take it seriously. Here we are, right around the corner from the FDA strictly enforcing those rules. There's this little bit, this shred of hope, which I don't want to give people hope in this matter because we really don't know what they're going to do. But there's that
we need hope. We need the hope, Alex. Rebellions are built on hope. Don't you watch Star Wars? Rebellions are built on hope.
Yeah. So, you know, it's the FDA has this enforcement discretion, which the agency fought for in this, you know, recent court case. And they have retained their ability to, you know, on a case-by-case basis, exempt manufacturers from certain compliance deadlines. Now, there's no assurances that that's what they'll do.
You're right.
There's no guidelines for how that would be applied. So nobody should take that for granted. I just want to make sure that at least I say it, that it is there. It's a possibility. But the industry is going to have to fight for that. And we as consumers are also going to have to make the case and really echo things that Mitch Zeller said, that, you know, if we are looking at a mass exodus from the marketplace, people are going to go back to smoking, and that's bad.
Yes.
In the interim, in the meantime, all of this nonsense we're seeing at the state and local level is still going on.
Yes.
So states absolutely, you know, well, not absolutely, but states believe that they have the authority to ban flavors and ban the products. We've got this ridiculous bill from Dick Durbin saying that, you know, if you're going to say it helps people quit smoking, then you should get it approved as a smoking cessation device. You've got this other, you know, the ordinance that the whole ballot initiative is about in San Francisco is products are banned until they get all the way through market approval. That's stricter than what the FDA has, by the way. And if anybody's unfamiliar with PMTA, once your PMTA application is accepted, you have a year to keep your product on the market. San Francisco, you got to go through the whole process. There's no year grace period.
Wow.
So these are all things that municipalities and counties and state governments are going to be doing. If your legislature's in session, expect to see some of this crap.
Yeah, expect it. And I mean, do you foresee any other states kind of taking Michigan's lead and this, you know, Gretchen Whitmer just by executive decision just banned flavors? Obviously a lot of people are upset about it, and I think they're going to, you know, there's certain people trying to fight it. But do you think other states are just going to see that and go, "Oh, we can do that. We can do that," and then just follow suit and do the same exact thing? I mean, that is scary to me.
Yeah, it depends on the state. Depends on your state constitution and what the rules are. You know, according to Michigan, the governor does have that ability to declare an emergency and use emergency powers to put forth some sort of regulation, but it only lasts for 6 months. And right now, on Thursday, there's a committee meeting. I'm about to put out an engagement for it to all the Michigan folks. You know, there's a committee hearing, it's an oversight committee looking at whether or not, you know, the governor can actually do this. They're demanding some more transparency. They want to hear from the industry. They want to hear from citizens. So we're going to, you know, try to make sure that messages are getting to the committee. But New York, you know, we had Governor Cuomo. I'm in New York. We had Governor Cuomo come out yesterday, and the statement, I believe, was he was directing the Department of Health to put out this warning. But he, in that press conference, if I didn't see it, but if I remember what I've read, he's directing the legislature to give him some legislation that would ban flavors. And those bills exist. They have been on the table for the past like 4 or 5 years. There's a couple of lawmakers in New York that they submit the same bill session after session. Linda Rosenthal is one. She absolutely hates vaping. She hates people who vape.
Yeah.
I got the stink eye from her one time on the Upper West Side.
Oh.
Just she caught a whiff of some sort of banana muffin coming out of somebody's mouth.
Offensive banana muffin.
Just a horrible person. So New York, we had Michigan, apparently Ohio, which I haven't looked into yet. I just haven't had time. And I suspect, we're going to see other states. I think it depends on how hungry their governors are for media attention. So if somebody's trying to, rile up the voters and look like they're doing something, then they'll probably put out an announcement. But it remains to be seen whether or not they can do that legally.
And isn't that just one of the most obnoxious things of all time is, look, this is a fairly serious topic. We're talking about the health of the nation, cancer, COPD, things like this. And it's so frustrating and so obnoxious to see these grandstanding politicians simply using it as part of their whatever platform and for attention they don't care. It's just a hot button topic to them.
Well, I think, it's like any propaganda. It's always peppered with some truth. And, I don't really question people's sincerity about wanting to protect the children. I just think that they're, it gets lost in the eager to please. It's
eager to please.
You've got these parents groups out there. You've got Matt Myers and the body parts groups, and they're all coming at lawmakers with an agenda. They want tobacco gone. And I mean, let's not dance around the subject of, the American Cancer Society said nice things about us.
Right.
The American Cancer Society signed a letter with all these other groups saying PMTA enforcement needs to happen immediately. Mm-hmm. And so they don't really care about whether or not you have access to safer products. They think that nicotine gum and patch and prescription drugs and counseling is all anybody needs.
Right. Right.
So when you're taking advice about protecting children from people who just are advocating for prohibition, it all gets lost in the message. And I feel for parents. I'm not a parent myself, but I was once a pretty reckless teenager, and so I know what I put my folks through, and I understand that people are very concerned about addiction and other substance use and all of this dangerous stuff. But one of the things I think people have to recognize is that the reason why we're so afraid of all of this stuff is because it happens in the shadows. Yep. There is no regulatory oversight of how these products are made, sold, or consumed. And that creates this, very dark and shady world where people get hurt. Yes. So and I'm not saying kids should use drugs, but I'm not naive enough to not acknowledge that teenagers are going to do these things. Yeah. If they're going to do these things, we have to give them better advice than just say no.
Yeah, than just say no. Yeah. Yeah. Just say no. Once upon a time it was okay with smokers just to the quit or die mentality, Like, we don't offer smokers any help. It's your own decision, just quit or die. And that's only acceptable. I don't understand when smokers became like this second-class citizen.
There's a good book on it, actually, and he's on Twitter. I want to say his name is James McFadden. He wrote a book called Tobacco Knocked, and I have it. I just haven't read it, but he gets a lot into dissecting anti-smokers' brains, getting into the motivations behind the whole war on smoking and war on smokers. Yeah. Sometime there is a really long history of this, actually. I mean, the earliest written record of any kind of maybe tobacco control comes from 1604. I want to say it was like King Charles V. He wrote this decree. It was called a counterblast to tobacco, and he listed kind of 4 points of why his subjects shouldn't consume tobacco, they shouldn't smoke or use tobacco at all. And one of them is probably, one of the earliest recorded accounts of, racism in tobacco policy, where he referenced that, men who use tobacco act like they become like the savages where the tobacco was grown. And that's not acceptable. Yeah,
wow.
It's pretty, yeah.
Wow, that's bananas. All right, let me read some of these super chats here from the chat. Mike Walsh, very gracious of you. He says, I wish I could do more at this moment, but I know that every little bit helps. Hashtag it takes everyone. Look, I really appreciate that, Mike. Casaa really appreciates that. Oh, my Lanta, very gracious of you. Oversight Committee will meet in its regular location Thursday, 10:30 a.m. in room 236 of the Office House Building, 124 North Capitol Ave, Lansing, Michigan. Meetings are open and available to the public. Spread the word. Let's go. Good information there, Dan. Really appreciate that. Samuel Williams, the founding father, very gracious of you. Thought this was America. What happened to freedom of speech? Don't need the government to protect me from all founding all the founding fathers would be rolling in their graves over stuff like this. I think that's an excellent point. And when Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan did this executive sort of flavor ban thing, I noticed it wasn't just vapors that were upset about it. It seemed like a lot of people in Michigan were really upset about it. I saw comments on Twitter and I saw comments on some articles where people saying, look, I'm not a smoker or a vapor, but that's just abuse of authority. Like, I'm not okay with this. People are not okay with this. What are the odds of getting non-smokers and non-vapors on board with sort of going against this government corruption, misinformation?
Yeah, we're already getting feedback from state lawmakers. This is why we're seeing this hearing, is because people in Michigan responded to this, and we have several thousand people within the first 24 hours responded to our call to action. So lawmakers have been hit with this for days, and it really a governor's the concept of emergency powers exists for a reason. It exists when there is a real emergency,
yes,
and you don't have time to deal with the legislature in order to do something like step in and save people's lives. But for this issue, this is a clear overstep of her authority. And it's when you give somebody emergency powers or give them that option, there's a trust there that this person's only going to use this in justifiable situations. But yeah, this is clearly this is going to this should erode her credibility.
Yes.
She, as a politician, her career should be damaged by this.
Yeah, it should be, and I hope that it is. And I'm going to continue to try to damage her career because of this. Absolutely. And honestly, a lot of the times when I see it just happened in Michigan, but when you see these flavor ban things, it feels so lazy to me. It feels like they would rather just ban it than even attempt to understand it. I feel like the politicians and the health committee members go, no, that's just too much work. We're just going to ban it instead. No, that sounds like too much work to try to understand it. And now that we have this cannabis aspect that's now included and sort of mixed up in all of this vaping, cannabis, vitamin E acetate, I think these blanket bans and things are not going to be effective because they refuse to learn the intricacies of it. It just seems super lazy to me.
Yeah, it's not only is the policy lazy, but like you said, all the discussions leading up to this are clearly missing the point. So across the country, the minimum legal sales age for any nicotine product is 18.
Yes.
There are communities where enforcement is carried out very well. Certainly most of the people who run a vapor shop are on sort of heightened awareness about this. They're very good about carding people. I'm not going to say that everybody's perfect. I don't care what segment of the industry you're in. People are making mistakes. But, we have guidelines. We have a way to, at least do the best we can to prevent sales to minors.
Right.
Even if you could achieve all of that, the kids are doing it anyway.
Yes.
They're going to find a way to get their hands on this stuff. And just to give you an example, so one of the people who was at this meet and greet for local candidates on Sunday is a middle school principal. And as soon as he heard vaping, he was like, oh, it's crazy. I mean, the kids, they all have it. He's got a desk drawer full of devices and liquids and all this stuff. And then he said, now they're taking like the capsules for like cold medicine.
Sure. Okay.
I sincerely hope that they are using blanks and they're filling them with e-liquid and then they're selling that. So it's the vaping culture's Lucy.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah. So because, the cost of again, we have these arguments about how raising the price discourages young people from using them. No. Well, now kids have figured out a way to kind of cut down on that cost, and they can sell them in little kind of single dose things. So they take that capsule and they empty it into their cartridge or pod or whatever, and then they vape it.
Yeah. Wow. See, and
that's not some big tobacco or big vapor plot. The kids figured that out on their own.
Yeah, that's them.
So what does anybody think that Prohibition's going to do?
Yeah, Prohibition. I mean, and look, in 7th grade, let's talk about 13-year-old Nick Green in 7th grade, smoking for sure. Never bought cigarettes, but I smoked. Definitely smoked a lot of weed. Never bought any weed, but smoked weed. Definitely drank a lot. Never bought any liquor, but definitely drank a lot. So for me, all of that stuff was illegal, but I definitely 100% was able to get it and use it. I mean,
yeah.
Is that just anecdotal evidence to people? Do we not learn from the past? I mean, by doing this prohibition and banning flavors, aren't they just creating a bigger black market? A much more robust black market?
It's the kids are going to get it from social sources. I don't care how high you raise the age. It's always going to happen. What's the legal minimum purchase age for marijuana in most of the country?
Yeah, 21.
It's infinity.
21,
no,
18?
it's
Is it infinity?
There is no minimum legal purchase age in most of the country. It's right. When I was a kid, nobody's allowed to buy LSD, but I did it when I was 13 years old. Yeah. So, how did that work out?
But it was illegal. Yeah. How did you get it? It was illegal.
Some guy made it in his basement. I don't know. I don't know where it came from.
Well, that's the thing about criminals is they usually don't care about the laws. That's the thing.
Yeah. And I was 13. I didn't know anything about, traceability and product standards and good manufacturing practices.
Yeah. No, nobody does at 13. If someone
here's some drugs.
Yeah, it's like if someone hands you a pod at 13 and your friends are around and they're like, hit this pod, you go, okay, I'm definitely going to hit this pod, and I don't know what's in it.
It's one of those points that they love to bring up in committee hearings is like how kids don't know that there's nicotine in these products. Well, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist or even an epidemiologist to figure out that they don't know what's in it because they're not getting it in the original package.
Yes.
They're just some friend is passing it around in the bathroom or gives them whatever, and there's no warning label on that.
Nope. Nothing. In fact, what I was reading about with some middle school kids were apparently doing this, and not that I want to give anybody any ideas, but one of the ways, I guess, that the underage youths are using vapor products is someone will buy a jewel, and it will be left in a sort of secret spot in the bathroom, maybe, where anybody can go in, have a few hits, put it back for the next person to come in there, have a few hits, put it back for the next person. Those kids, man, they're smart. That's smart.
The one thing I heard from the middle school principal was they hide them in ceiling tiles in the classrooms. And then, they get on their phone and they tell their friends, in third period, whatever, to look above the tile behind the desk and row, whatever.
Yep.
And there it'll be.
Check it out.
And
hit your jewel.
So, we've passing notes in class that's so low tech, and
I know
Stone Age technology at this point.
Stone Age technology. Well, we got another super chat from Sergio. Very gracious of you. $10 going to Casaa. AZ Advocate. To help Casaa, I'm trying here in Arizona. Very gracious of you there, AZ Advocate. He did another one. It should have been 10. Oops. And then he did another one and said, I'm having a bad day, okay? Kelly Bell, very gracious of you. For Casaa. Russell Thomas, we got one in there for Casaa. Appreciate that. Jimmy James, very gracious of you. Hashtag vaping saves lives. Om Comforts, very gracious of you. That's going to Casaa as well. Make sure I didn't miss any of these. Chronic Master Vapor. Love that name, sir. Vaping helped me quit the government-funded death sticks. The hobby side of vaping kept the addict inside me dormant for 2 years, and my asthma is non-existent. I'm a proud member of Casaa. Thank you so much. Very much appreciate that. Tactical Ted. It's frustrating how people accept everything on the news to be truth. It's been slower in the shops since this BS blew up, and I have to educate customers on what's really going on. And that's an excellent point with how much like distrust there is in the media, with how much distrust there is in this current administration, with how much distrust there is in the FDA and the CDC. People still just take what they say as Bible truth, regardless of their previous, well, they were wrong about that, but they're probably right about vaping.
It's the headlines. I mean, we really have a crisis of people digesting information in this country, and folks just read the headline. When I sent out our alert about try smokeless tobacco products and anything else before you go back to smoking, I had well over a dozen responses that were just angry, like, how dare you spread this propaganda and all this nonsense. And I thought, wait, that was, I put vaping lung syndrome in the subject line because that's what people are talking about. You have to open the email and please read the content.
Yes.
But this is policy advocacy by headline. It's science by headline. And these folks know that people just read the headlines.
Yeah.
So
that's it. And this is something that I've talked about with other people. Joe Rogan mentioned this on his podcast too. He calls it the war of the loud. It's just whoever's louder, that's who's right. Whoever's the loudest.
I responded. One of our neighbors actually sent me a link to some little, skimming the headlines kind of email she gets every morning, and it was about Juul, but it was also about the lung issues. And I responded and said, this is the problem with living in a post-truth society. It's the person with the loudest microphone gets to set the narrative. So
that's perfect. Post-truth society. Welcome to America, where we love tobacco and facts don't matter.
Yeah.
That's 100%. And now we got, okay, so I do kind of actually want to wrap this up a little bit. We've been going for an hour, and I want to keep this a little bit shorter, maybe make it a little bit more accessible to people on the replay, because there's a lot of good information in here from Alex that's been thrown out there. The very last thing I wanted to mention is now we have Bloomberg, the philanthropist, who's about to spend $160 million to ban To ban flavored vapor? Is that what he said? Are you familiar with this, Alex? Have you seen any of this?
Yeah, this came, obviously, like everything, this sort of came out in the midst of doing all the kinds of other stuff. So I hadn't had time to sit down with this. But yeah, that's my understanding, is that this is part of his, and Bloomberg has a very anti-tobacco agenda. There's a pretty good analysis on Twitter of his kind of pattern with funding these types of things. He came out being very anti-pharma company at some point, but I think once he realized that the pharmaceutical companies would be funding his political career, he had to kind of roll back those statements. So, he goes where the wind goes, and he's a finance guy. It's that simple for him. So he obviously sees some sort of money-making opportunity here, and he's got a lot of cash to throw around.
Yeah.
This is another one of those things is, all of these anti-tobacco, anti-nicotine, anti-vaping groups, they're all very well funded by rich people like, Bill and Melinda Gates and Bloomberg. So we're kind of outgunned here, and it's been serious for years.
Yeah. It's crazy how, and here's where this is the craziest part to me is vapors, tobacco. I hate using the term vapors, but like tobacco harm reduction advocates, we have all that we're fighting with is facts and, science and things like this. And it seems like all of the antis, all that they're fighting with is money because they know they have more than us, and misinformation because it's so easy to do. And they rely on no facts. They rely on no science. They rely on no data. And then the data that they do rely on, like the 2018 National Youth Tobacco Survey, gets twisted and conflated to where it doesn't even represent the original data anymore. I mean, they can't, this isn't sustainable. They have to lose at some point, right? They can't run from the science forever, Alex.
This is kind of the dark and lame part of all of this is that, I wake up every morning reassured that I am on the right side of history. That's how I can keep showing up for work every day. And I know that, thousands, millions of vapors out there probably feel the same way. Unfortunately, history shows us that folks being on the righteous side of things, we don't really get any credit for it, and we don't see the policies that we need until, a generation down the line. Yeah. So this can drag on for 5, 10, 15, 20 years before there is any kind of look back and policymakers and historians saying, wow, Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids really screwed up on this one.
Really screwed up.
And people died unnecessarily because of it. I sincerely don't want to wait that long for this to get fixed. No. But it's definitely a possibility, and there will be a reckoning. It's just we may not actually be able to hold people accountable to the extent that they end up in jail.
Well, that's what I'm wondering is if 10 years down the road, can Juul sue these health committee groups or sue a politician for misinformation, against slander, whatever? Is there anything in the future they could do? Could we sue politicians for misinforming us on the real dangers of tobacco versus vapor products?
I know you said you were trying to wrap this up, and then you asked.
I know. That's where my thoughts went. Let's just keep this going for a little bit.
This was the woman who called me earlier today was asking that, and this has certainly been something that people have discussed. Just to, by way of background, Iowa Attorney General Tom Miller, who has been squarely on the side of vaping for a while now, gave a presentation about just this. Back when Chicago did the it was like the vaping poison, or no, it was the vaping truth campaign. And they had these huge billboards that were talking about how it's poison and this and that. And I remember Vicky, who's in Chicago, has a couple of shops there. She had people walking into her store that had just seen this billboard and were totally freaked out, and they were absolutely reluctant to try a vapor product. And so, this was one of the earliest examples of a public health campaign actually causing harm and discouraging people from switching, and they just end up to continue smoking. And so that was the thought of, wait a second, these messages are harming people. We should be able to take legal action against the Chicago Department of Health. Yes. It turns out there really is no legal pathway to do that. And especially not for, an attorney general. Attorneys general typically deal with, consumer product issues. If you're injured by a product, you can work with your state attorney general to take on the company and get some sort of compensation, or, get them to change their practices, whatever the nature of the lawsuit. But public health departments are not producing a consumer good. They're not a company in the traditional sense. So it's just not. There are possibly some legal theories out there about how to go about this, but nobody's successfully come up with it. It should be a slam dunk if somebody can figure it out.
100%. Because the state of California, I'd like to hold them responsible, because almost every day you drive by these billboards. My wife, Casey, sent me a picture she took in Los Angeles. It got to be 20 stories high, 30 stories high. Just nicotine is brain poison. And then a picture of a Juul. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, that is a public health subtraction. That is a negative public health. That is someone who is a smoker might see that and just continue smoking. And they say like, oh, it's a youth issue, right? We're trying to get to the youth. But it's not only youths that see these posters or see these billboards on the freeway where adults are driving. They want their message to get to the youths. It's not getting to the youths, it's getting to adults, and then the adults just continue smoking. And I think that they need to be held responsible for that.
This is anytime that we see anybody come out with some sort of new campaign targeted at the young people and it's going to scare them into not using all of these things, it almost immediately after that comes out, those exact same messages are delivered to city councils and state legislators.
Right.
There is no micro targeting or separation between adults and youth. I mean, I would not be surprised if, I think it was part of the Real Cost campaign. There was that video that the FDA came out with the brain worms and all this stuff. And it's an epidemic sweeping the country. Mm-hmm. I'm almost positive that video was shown to adult lawmakers. And the FDA did their research on that, and they concluded that this video should not be viewed by adults. It will completely distort their understanding of nicotine and vaping and all of that. But it is absolutely, those messages have been used to persuade lawmakers to pass awful legislation.
Awful legislation. Unbelievable. It's unbelievable, Alex. All right, let me get through these last few super chats here. Brad, very gracious of you. Nate, also, shout out to Nate, very gracious of you. We got Ryan Wolfer here. Had to educate my sister on vaping. She believed the news on lung issues and everything. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate when I talk to vapors who are scared by this, who are themselves considering stopping vaping and picking up a pack of cigarettes, because at least you know what you're getting, right? That's what a lot of people say. Well, at least you know what you're getting with cigarettes. Like, yeah, all the bad stuff, bro. All the bad stuff. None of the good stuff. None of the good stuff.
If I could...
Go ahead.
If I could just jump in, for folks, I forget the name already, but for folks like this person,
Ryan.
You have to have
Ryan Wolfer. Ryan Wolfer. Yeah.
Ryan Wolfer. So for folks like Ryan who have to have that conversation with their siblings or friends, take the FDA's warning, have that handy. The FDA has explicitly said, first of all, that this is related to THC cartridges on the black market. Second of all, the FDA has made it clear that this is not a situation that is coming about after a long period of time. And the way that reads is this is not a result of long-term use. This is something that has happened suddenly. And that, from their perspective, points to a particular ingredient that is making people sick. If people who vape need some reassurances about the ingredients that are in their products, well, legally, nothing is supposed to have changed since August 8th, 2016. If a manufacturer does start using some sort of suboptimal kind of ingredient to save some money, which from what I understand is not a very good way to save money, then that triggers a PMTA from the FDA. The FDA can absolutely take action and say, you've changed your product, you need to go through this pre-market pathway. Mm-hmm. So it's all signs are pointing way away from the nicotine side of things.
Yes, way away from the nicotine side of things, but still, and I mean, this is a bigger discussion to have for another day, but it's the headline readers. And it seems like a lot of us, more people than not, are becoming conditioned to just be headline readers. Headline readers. It's just they see vaping, they associate vaping with the Juul. They go, it must be the Juul that's doing this.
Yeah.
Mission accomplished with all that misinformation. Smiderman, very gracious of you. $10 going to Casaa. Miniola. That's all he said is Mineola. Not sure exactly what that means, but I appreciate that, Smiter Man. Steven, very gracious of you. Jim, awesome, very gracious of you. Please ask Alex how Casaa spends its donations. Remember I told you we're going to defend Casaa today, Alex. Let's answer Jim's question.
So, we don't provide a, itemized breakdown of everything when, asked. It's people can go on to, oh God, why am I drawing a blank? It's the site where all the nonprofits are listed. GuideStar. People can go to GuideStar, and when we have them available, our annual 990 form is published there. We are required to file, tax returns with the IRS every year. And so that lists things like my salary, which I'm not going to talk about in polite company, but I do get paid.
Yeah.
I get paid.
As you should. As you should, Alex. No one's expecting you to do all of this work for zero. You should be getting paid.
I quit a pretty decent job to come work for Casaa, so I appreciate the compensation. I'm not, buying a sports car with this by any stretch of the imagination, but I can at least buy groceries. So all of those things are listed on there, more detailed in sort of a general way. We pay a lot of money for the legislative tracking software that we use. We pay for the point-and-click advocacy platform that we use. And then we have two other employees, Kristen Nullmarsh, and then our chief financial officer. We have to make sure our books are in order. We have to pay somebody to get that all done. We also pay annually, they're called solicitation filings, which allows us to accept donations from all over the country. There are some travel expenses. I haven't done a lot of travel this year, and I travel cheap. But attending conferences mainly, and every now and then we'll go to a trade show. I'm going to be in Tampa in October.
Okay.
And I'm going down to DC for the VTA conference next week, which is fortuitous because I have 2 live interviews scheduled while I'm down there. Yeah. There's quite a bit of, none of this really is cheap or free. Casaa did it on the cheap for several years. When I first started, we still had, when I was volunteering, I would do work for Greg Conley. And he would sort of, post something in the Skype chat or in Facebook and ask somebody to, look up all the lawmakers in this particular state or city. And I would come home from work and I would put together contact lists for Greg Conley. And then you put that in a blogger post and send it out to everybody, which was like roughly 20,000 people. And we had people from all over the country responding to, legislation in, like Vero Beach, Florida.
You're right.
And it was small potatoes and very slow. And it's really hard to kind of get people to sit down and, copy and paste all of the email addresses and then write their letter. And we're providing bullet points. It's a mess. And it doesn't really generate a lot of engagement. So that's why we pay for this, digital advocacy platform. So it really is point and click, and you don't have to think necessarily about the message. We want people to, add their story, personalize it, and really think about what they're sending. But we're not putting it all on the advocates to come up with this stuff. Yeah. And that is by no stretch of the imagination free.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's obviously substantial operating costs involved. I mean, obviously. And like I said, Alex needs to get paid. Alex, this is your job. This is your full-time job. He is 100% full-time fighting for our rights. And I think that's worth all the money we can muster. For British Eyes Only, very gracious of you. Many friends and coworkers ask me about headlines. I calmly and concisely explain to them the facts, educate the misinformed, and the truth will spread. I got a couple more super chats here we're going to get through. Antonio, very gracious. Oppose Illinois House Bill 3883. Not 100% familiar what that is. Is that a flavor ban, usage ban, something?
Flavor ban.
Flavor ban in Illinois. Oh, fantastic. All right, Illinois House Bill 3883.
It was just introduced on the 5th, I believe. So I haven't checked on it today. I don't know if it's getting a committee assignment or a committee hearing. But yeah, any of this nonsense in Illinois is particularly dangerous now because we've got Dick Durbin out there saying stupid things. And I believe this year he actually showed up in the legislature in support of something which is very rare and not necessarily on the level. So, yeah.
Well, awesome. JJ for FSU, very gracious of you. So many people didn't think what happened in Michigan could happen to them, and they are dead wrong. I bet Michigan thought the same thing. You can't wait for someone else to speak up for you. Hashtag rise up. Tracy Kennedy, very gracious of you. Just a skosh. I appreciate it. Casaa appreciates it as well. Joshua, we have to go on the offensive. TV, radio, big rally in D.C. We can't always play defense for Casaa. Nate Johnson, this is going to be the last super chat here. Nate Johnson, solution to the vape issue, 2 steps. Ban cigarettes and turn vape into prescription systems. Vape shops can be licensed vape dispensaries. Not ideal, but a compromise that will save lives. Yeah, that's not. I don't know if any of that would be a real helpful solution. See, I mean, I can't speak for Casaa. I don't want cigarettes banned. I mean, I don't want cigarettes banned. I think if I'm a freedom guy. If you're a free American, smoke if you want. You should be allowed to do that. I don't want cigarettes banned.
I mean, we typically don't take a position on policies affecting smoking. But I think, there is a line there that, I'm never going to advocate for cigarette prohibition, mainly because we'll just see all of the cigarettes sold on the black market.
Yeah.
So it's, we are learning this lesson with cannabis. We're going to learn this lesson with other drugs, that it's better to have a legal, regulated marketplace where consumers can have some confidence about where the products are coming. And, even, the incentive for states is that they can get some tax revenue off of this. So, yeah, I'm not interested in banning cigarettes. And as far as, vapor products only being allowed as medicine, think about the nicotine products that are available as medicine.
Yeah.
They are pretty underwhelming.
Yeah.
They're kind of uncomfortable to use. That's what we'll get.
That's exactly what we'll get. That's exactly what we'll get. One last super chat from my main man, Vinyl and Vapor. Very gracious of you. He just says, thank you for your hard work, Alex. That's coming from my buddy Eric. So, that means a lot right there. All right.
Friends on Twitter.
Friends on Twitter. Yeah, we're all friends on Twitter. We all go on Twitter and have each other's backs, defend each other. I like your tweets all the time. I'm like, that deserves a like. Alex Clark's tweet right there. Like it. Go like the tweets. Honestly, get on Twitter, get involved, join Casaa, get involved. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up, but I want to thank Mr. Alex Clark. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to help educate us less informed people. Give me a final little pitch. Join Casaa. Follow you on Twitter. Where can people find you if they wanna be in the Alex Clark world?
Definitely join Casaa. Follow at Casaa Media on Twitter. You can follow me. I'm at Hello Alex. It's hello_Alex. And for anybody who wants information to give out to folks, to skeptics or anybody that's worried about this stuff, definitely check out our website. It's a section that's called Free Printable Materials. We have Trifold pamphlets that you can print out. You can just refer them to the About Tobacco Harm Reduction section on our site. So there's a lot of really good information there for the skeptics or the people who've lost faith in all of this. We want to make sure that they're, sticking with smoke-free alternatives and not going back to smoking. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, I agree. Real good discussion. Thank you again, Alex, for coming on today. Such short notice. Alex hit me up like a few hours ago and said, hey, maybe this is the week where we finally do the damn thing. And I'm like, today it seems like the right time with just so much chaos and anarchy going on right now, so much misinformation. You guys, we got to stay educated. We have to keep spreading the truth. We have to have science on our side. We may not have money. We may not have
politicians, powerful politicians, but we do have science on our side. One more super chat from Antonio. Very, very gracious of you. Thank you. Thank you, Antonio. So thank you, everybody, for being here one more time. Alex, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. I appreciate all that Casaa does, and I hope our paths cross sooner rather than later, my friend. Sooner rather than later.
It'd be great to see you.
It would be great. It would be great. So, I guess that's all we got for today, everybody, here on Tuesday Bro Tuesday. And thanks for coming out. Thank you, Alex. Apparently, I'm just stuck in a loop now of just thanking people. Thanks, everybody in the chat. Thanks, Alex, for coming out. Let's just end the damn thing.